been driving for a while and you realize you've been gripping the wheel way longer than you should have, way tighter, way more anxious or nervous? I have, and I have been in circumstances on the road where I was past the point where I should have stopped. And I knew exactly where I was. I knew that I wasn't in danger, but I also knew that I had crossed the line from driving well to driving through. And you know those moments where you have zero recollection of how you got to that next destination or that next exit. I have pushed myself because I was almost there. Just one more exit, just one more mile. And I was so close to the destination and felt like stopping would have cost me something. I think a lot of us lead that way. I think a lot of us live that way. And we run online communities and we create content and we lead ministries and we build these things that we genuinely care about. We wholeheartedly care about it. And we keep going and going and going because there's always a reason to keep going. There's always something next. We're diving into this series, Rhythms for the Road. And as we do, as we begin, I want to ask you an honest question before we go anywhere else. When is the last time you actually stopped? Stopped on purpose. Not that you crashed on the couch and you're scrolling on your phone, but you took time to intentionally step away for renewal. And I'd love to know, if you're here live, what does stopping look like for you right now? Or is it something that you never quite get to? That's what tonight is about. If you're here live, feel free to share in the chat what stopping looks like for you. And if you're watching the replay, I encourage you to share in the comments. If we haven't met yet, my name is Dr. Jen Roth, and I am a spiritual director, I'm a creator, and I am passionate about sharing about rest because my life has been transformed as a result. And this is the first of 5 conversations that we're going to have every Monday night in June, Rhythms for the Road. And I want to make it clear that in this conversation, I'm not coming to you who has arrived and figured everything out. I am coming to you as someone who is learning this slowly, implementing it slowly, and in many instances, it was the hard way. It was because my body gave me no other choice, and the lessons that I have learned as a result have been so incredibly powerful. The ways that I have come to know Jesus has been incredibly transformational. And I am here to share the messy. I am here to share the joys. And I want you to know that we are in this together. And tonight we're talking about simply pulling over. And I want us to think about and name what actually happens when we don't pull over. And I want to be specific because we have heard burnout so often. And I think to the extent that sometimes it loses its weight, it's written off as exhaustion and being tired. But it's more than that. It's more than that because when you never stop, you start to lose perhaps the thread of who you are apart from what you produce. And we're going to chat a little bit about what that might look like. I want to say hello to those who are here live. Thank you, Bill. Bill is joining us from LA. Brenda, stopping looks like Sabbath. Stopping brings rest. It's good to think about what are those ways that we choose to make an intentional stop and who we are apart from what we're producing as people who lead, as people who build, who create, who teach, who show up for others, who care for others. The thread can get tangled quickly. And in those circumstances, what we're doing, we often get feedback on, when people are engaging with our content or responding to our posts and joining our communities or eating our meals. And that feedback loop is real and it's important. It matters. But without stopping, that feedback can quietly start to become the thing that tells us whether or not we are okay. You have a good launch week and you feel valuable. You have a community and all of a sudden it goes quiet and you feel like you're an absolute failure. You gain a client and now all of a sudden you're an expert. You have it all together. Or someone unsubscribes to your channel and it hits differently. It's far beyond the way that it should. And that is the thread getting tangled. It's common and it's normal for us to be impacted by our feedback, but is it impacting who we are? And I want you to know, and I want you to think about tonight, how you were beloved before you were useful. And there's a moment in the Gospels that I'm often reminded of where Jesus is baptized and he hasn't launched his official ministry yet. He hasn't fulfilled the mission and the reason that he came to earth. And before any of that, before the miracles, before the teaching, before the movement, he hears a voice from heaven. This is my dearly loved son who brings me great joy. That's it. This is my dearly loved son who brings me great joy. Not who brings me great joy because he fulfilled these promises, not he gives me great joy because of the work that he has done. He brings him great joy because he's loved. And he was named and loved before the world saw him as useful. And of course, Jesus is God, and coming to earth as a human, because of Jesus' life, ministry, death, burial, resurrection, ascension, because of that sacrifice, God sees us through who Jesus is, and we are loved. We are loved too. And many of us know that in our heads, those of us who are followers of Jesus. But sometimes we live otherwise. And we live like we have to earn the pause, earn the rest, like it comes after we have done enough. And we need to check off enough boxes to justify having this slow day, this time of rest, because it costs something. Now, the pace that feels productive right now, if it's unsustainable in the long run, it's borrowing against something that maybe you haven't calculated yet. Maybe it's borrowing against your health, your creativity, your presence with loved ones, your clarity, the very thing that maybe led you to do what you're doing in the first place. And this often sneaks up on leaders specifically because you can keep the output going for a long time. before anyone sees that depletion, because leaders are good at showing up. That's why they're leading. But something happens that you know about and those who are close to you know about when your tank is getting low. And I want you to think about those moments in your own life. Think about, what is the quiet signal that tells you you've been going too long? And feel free to drop it in the chat. What is a word or a sentence or even an emoji? What is the quiet signal that tells you that you have been going too long? Maybe it's being irritable. I'll speak for myself. Or just feeling incredibly run down or discouraged. What's that signal, that quiet signal when you know, okay, I've pushed a little too far? And maybe it's that you're not quite sure, but it's worth paying attention to that signal. And we have it when we look for it. Feeling overwhelmed, constant anxiety. Yes. Sometimes it's just that buzz underneath that feels like it's not going away. And I want to be honest about why rest is hard, because I think sometimes we skip over it too fast. It's easy to say rest more. We often talk about it. Oh, I'm so busy, I need rest. But to actually rest and do it is harder. And I feel strongly that for those of us who are taking these steps of faith to choose to go at the pace of grace, however the Spirit is leading, it is so countercultural that we can't do it by ourselves, at least not well, at least not for the long haul. And we need others to be able to have these conversations and know, okay, it's not just me. And contrary to the lies that we hear, the reason that we often don't rest isn't laziness. It's that it feels like a risk. Maybe if I slow down, everything is going to fall apart. Maybe if I rest, I'm going to fall behind. And if I pull over, someone is going to pass me. And for those of us who are building things online, whether running an online community, creating content, just showing up consistently, that fear has this practical dimension when it can impact livelihood, because consistency matters and visibility matters and the algorithm matters. And those are not irrational concerns. It's worth naming, but it's also worth exploring what's underneath that. What's the reason that we don't stop? What's the reason that we don't step away? And my question for you to just come back to and consider is that, could it be that it means that your value is in what you do? And if that is the case, there's no judgment, because we've learned it in school. You work hard and you earn good grades. In jobs, you work hard and you get a paycheck. Some of us have learned it in church, right? Where the busy people seemed like they were the most faithful. And that was brought into how we lead, how we serve, how we build, how we show up. When your sense of worth is built into your work, stopping doesn't feel like rest. And it can feel like a free fall. And I want you to think about questions to ponder even after you log off. When has stopping felt scary, like a free fall for you, where actually stopping was harder than going and making that decision. When has it been scary for you? And if you're here, drop an emoji if that resonates, because I know that that has been the case in my life. And as we're on this adventure together, I want you to think about a road trip. When we pack the car for a road trip over a long span of time, we're considering the stops that we're going to make along the way. You don't stop for gas just because you ran out. You stop because you know what happens if you don't. You don't pull over to eat because you've gotten to the point where you're so dehydrated and incapacitated. You stop and you fuel because you know you can't drive on empty. And pulling over is something that people who know where they're going choose to do. Even if you don't have the big picture, just know that you're going in that direction, because pulling over helps you to actually get there, to get to that next exit, that next destination. And that's what rest is. That's what we're going to talk about this month. And so every Monday night throughout June, same time at 6:30 Central, we're going to continue these conversations. And I think of it like a road trip into summer. It's not officially summer right now on June 1st, but it feels like it. There's a shift. Um, we know that plans are changing, semesters have ended. We know that calendars can quickly fill up. And for some, there's a very intentional time of slowness, to the point where maybe it's difficult in the summer. And for others, summer is incredibly full and busy. And I want us to consider our spiritual road trip as we enter into this season. And every Monday night, we'll continue the next piece of the journey as we come together for 5 Mondays, 5 conversations, where each one will build on the last. And we're going to talk about what rest actually is. And I'm not talking about the rest that we see in the beautiful Pinterest pictures or Instagram posts, or, 5-star resorts and bubble baths. And there's nothing wrong with vacations. There's nothing wrong with taking care. But what does it look like to actually practically choose to rest in a way that renews us? Not where we crash and burn, but where we're being renewed. And we're going to look at why it is so hard to receive. So we're going to look at our perspectives. We will look at specific practices. And what does it look like to live and to lead sustainably for the long haul? And so by the end of June, we will finish up this mini road trip with something practical, with rhythms that you can actually live into and build around your real life, around the actual seasons that you find yourself in. And so this series, this gathering tonight, is the pullover. And it's a chance to just slow down for a few moments and take this honest look and find your way back to a pace, either for the first time or the 25th time, finding a pace that is actually sustainable. And I encourage you, don't feel like you have to have everything figured out in order to show up. Come however you are. If you feel burnt out, show up. If you feel rejuvenated, show up. and there's something that we can learn from one another. And I want to extend an invitation for you to you. Once a month, I host what I call Sacred Pause, which is an online mini retreat, and it is 1 hour. It's over the lunch hour for those of us who are in Central Time. There's no cost to attend, and we gather for 1 hour for a time of spiritual practices, reading of scripture, prayer, some reflective journaling. And if anything tonight, just in our introductory conversation resonated, and you recognized yourself somewhere along this road trip, I invite you to join us this Friday, June 5th, and we will gather together. And I want you to know that there is no pressure for you to come and feel like you need to be on camera or speak. Um, in fact, I actually encourage people to not have their cameras on and to allow this to be a very intimate, special time for you to simply be with Jesus. And it's designed as an opportunity for you to be still in God's presence. This 1 hour to slow down and to sit with scripture and to be with Jesus in a way that is unhurried. And you might think, well, what is an hour going to do? And I have thought that in the past. And it is amazing what happens if we have only 1 hour to sit and be still, to carve out. Then let's see what God does with that 1 hour when we invite him into that place. And a few of you here have been to a Sacred Pause gathering, and it is one of my favorite gatherings every month. And I absolutely love being able to invite people into this space. And so I encourage you, the link is in the description. It's also here on the screen. And all you have to do is RSVP, and I'll make sure you get the Zoom link the morning of this Friday, June 5th. Friends, I am grateful you're here. Would love to answer any questions or just hear your thoughts about pulling over, about taking a moment to pull over on our road trip. And I want you to know too that I hope you already know that you don't have to earn this pause, this time of slowing down, this opportunity to rest. It is already yours. It is a gift from God that invites us into rest, something that he modeled in creation. And it's an opportunity for us to grab hold of and receive the gift that he has given us in slowing down, in stillness. And so I invite you to join us on Friday, June 5th, no cost to attend. And I invite you to come back next Monday, June 8th, for part 2 of this conversation. Feel free to add some questions or just thoughts in the comments if you're watching the replay, and we will dive into that conversation when we gather next week. Thank you, friends. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you then.